How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, I wanted to talk about a great topic, internal versus external hiring. I saw a great article in Bank Director that I wanted to jump into, and this was actually a topic that I've wanted to talk about for quite some time because I think it's actually very interesting. So, this article is titled "The Tough Choice Between Internal Promotions or External Hiring. Firms that strike a balance between developing internal talent and hiring externally can build strong, adaptable leadership teams." So, whether to promote a current employee or hire an external candidate is a long-standing discussion in talent management, especially in financial services, where expertise, leadership, adaptability are critical. Some firms look externally for fresh perspectives, while others look to focus on internal promotions to ensure cultural continuity. The best strategies often combine internal development with external strategic hires. Bank Director's 2024 Compensation and Talent Survey revealed that 75% of banks plan to look externally to address gaps in their talent pipeline, and 70% also have an interest in enhancing internal talent development efforts to prepare current leaders for the future. Here's an overview of both approaches, their pros and cons, and how companies are balancing the two. So, internal talent development. So, internal talent development entails investing in existing employees by training, mentoring, and preparing them for leadership roles. What are the pros? Cost efficiency. Internal promotions often cost less than external hires, who may demand higher salaries and take time to onboard. Cultural fit. Employees already understand the company's culture, values, and operations. Higher retention and loyalty. Employees are more likely to stay if they see growth opportunities within the company. And then finally, faster productivity. Promoted employees already know the business and can transition smoothly into their new roles. Now, what are some of the cons? Limited perspectives. Relying solely on internal promotions can lead to stagnation and a lack of new ideas. Skill gaps. Some specialized or high-level roles may require expertise that current employees don't yet possess. Potential biases. Promoting from within can reinforce internal hierarchies and limit diversity. As you evaluate your talent pipeline, it may make sense for you to choose internal development when you already have strong leadership development programs in place, when maintaining company culture and institutional knowledge is a priority, or when long-term succession planning is a focus. Now let's take a look at external hiring. So, recruiting leaders or specialists from outside your institution can bring fresh ideas, expertise, and skills. So, what are the pros? Fresh perspectives and innovation. External hires bring different experiences, industry knowledge, and new ideas. Filling skill gaps quickly. So, external candidates often have specialized expertise that may not exist internally. Competitive advantage. Hiring top talent from competitors can strengthen your market position. Now, what are some of the cons? Higher costs. Recruiting, onboarding, and offering competitive salaries can be expensive. Longer adjustment period. New hires need time to understand company processes and build relationships. Cultural misalignment. External hires may struggle to fit into the company culture or team dynamics. Your company could benefit the most from external hiring when you need a rapid skill infusion in a critical area. Your bank needs critical expertise that is lacking. Innovation or transformation is a key goal, or there is no clear internal successor for a leadership position. So, balancing both approaches now. So many financial institutions take a hybrid approach, blending internal development with selective external hiring. This approach includes succession planning or identifying high potential employees for leadership while filling gaps within external hires. Leadership development programs that include investing in mentorship, training, and rotational programs to prepare internal talent. And finally, strategic external hiring to bring in external leaders when a fresh perspective or specialized skill is required. So a lot of companies operate with an 80-20 rule, 80% promoted from inside and 20% external hires to keep fresh ideas, limit groupthink, and bring in expertise that can see around corners. If your institution is ruminating on the idea of an external executive hire, it may be helpful to remember that external hires often pay for themselves many times over and can help scale the company faster. Now, what's the final takeaway? The best approach depends on a company's strategy, industry trends, and specific leadership needs. Firms that find the right balance between developing internal talent while selectively hiring externally tend to build strong, adaptable leadership teams. So, I think this is great, and I love this example here at the end, a lot of companies operate with the 80-20 rule, 80% promoted from inside and 20% external hires to keep fresh ideas, limit groupthink, and bring in expertise that they say can see around corners. That's great. Yeah, that's great. So, so this is, I mean, again, this argument has gone on for a long time. Is it better to just develop talent internally, or is it better to go outside and hire, the external expertise or talent that you need? So there's so many different aspects to this, right? So, and I think a lot of it depends on your strategy. So, I worked for a bank that when I first started my career, I worked for a bank called Commerce Bank, which was a bank that was headquartered in New Jersey. A lot of different commerce banks around the country, but this one was special in particular. So Commerce Bank was a high growth bank. This bank built 50 plus branches a year, was growing like crazy for a 33 year time period before, unfortunately, things kind of went south, and the bank ended up getting sold to TD Bank. Now, this bank, because of its growth strategy, really relied on promoting people internally. They had to bring people in kind of on the ground level and then train them up and then move them up the ladder because the constant growth, they constantly needed, they're opening new branches. You need new assistant managers, new branch managers, business development people, lenders, the whole kit and caboodle. You need all these different people, and you have to grow up the business, so to speak. So for them, and they had a Commerce University they used to train all the employees and offered just a tremendous amount of training. Great resources offered at the bank. So, but they needed that. That was all part of their strategy. Now, you may have let's say a typical community bank that's, 1 billion or 2 billion in asset size. And maybe they're just kind of, growing a little bit each year. Maybe they look to have a 5 to 10% growth rate, something like that. Let's say they're not opening new branches every year. Maybe they open a branch every 3 or 4 or 5 years, something like that. Their operation is going to be different. They may promote some people internally, but from time to time, it may be necessary for them to bring in the external expertise that they need. I'll give you another example. Say you're a $2 billion bank, and your goal is to become a $10 billion bank. Well, running a $10 billion bank is very different from running a $2 billion bank. And believe it or not, that is very true. And so if your goal is to get to 10 billion, you may, if you're the CEO, you may be sitting there and you may be going, you know what? I've got a lot of great people here, but none of them really know how to operate or run a much bigger bank. Therefore, it might be necessary to change the entire leadership team and bring in people from outside. Maybe you're going to bring in a bunch of people that work at banks that are 20 or 25 or 30 billion in asset size, because you're bringing them in because they understand how a bigger bank works, how it operates, the things that need to be done as you deal with the growing pains from that growth. So you might need to bring in a totally different leadership team with a different set of skills and different perspectives on how things operate. You might need a CEO who, like you said, you might look around the organization and you might say, you know what, we need a new CEO, and that person just isn't here, and we need to go outside to get somebody. I think that again, and then there's other things to look at here. Part of the issue in the banking industry right now is training. There's not a lot of training. There is, and there isn't a lot of training out there right now. Like, there's a lot of training that goes on, but but to me, it's not really the type of training that you really need if you're going to continue to move up the ladder. But a lot of the training is your basic stuff. For depending on what side. If you work on the retail side, the commercial side, the investment side, they have different things out there. But a lot of times today, you're not seeing the. I'll use the lending side, for example. Like, somebody comes in, they become a credit analyst, and they're trained as a credit analyst, and they develop those credit skills over 4, 5, 6 years. And then they get moved up to become a lender. They become a junior lender, and then a more maybe senior lender over the course of 10, 15 years. And so you have a career trajectory, and then that senior lender eventually becomes maybe a market president or a chief lending officer or something like that, depending on the size of the bank. So and that kind of career path is you're seeing less and less of that in the industry, unfortunately. And so, a lot of banks have adopted this idea over the years of like, well, whatever we need, oh, we'll just go pluck it from another bank. Well, that's getting tougher because those type of training programs aren't there. So it's like, oh, well, we're going to get that lender with all that credit training and all that experience or whatever. Then you look around and you're like, yeah, that 35-year-old lender with that type of training, they're not there. They're old. Those people exist, but now they're 45, 50, 55 years old, and they cost a lot more money. And so again, there's definitely a lot of challenges. And then there's the issue of, the one issue with promoting people internally that I've seen is that, companies have a tendency to take advantage of people. And what I mean by that is, so you're with the same company for 20 years and say you're very successful there and you move up the ladder. Well, you might get to a certain place and then someday you get a call from a headhunter and they're like, hey, would you be interested in this job over here? And it just out of curiosity, you might say, oh, well, how much are they paying? And they're like, well, they're going to pay you 150,000. And you're like, it's the same job at another bank. And, say it's comparable size bank, each bank is 8 billion in asset size, and you're like, they're going to pay me 150. I'm getting paid 110 where I'm at right now. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what's up with that? And then that can then start a whole chain of events. Cause then it becomes this whole thing of, I've been loyal to these guys and I've worked my butt off for these guys and I've created a lot of success here and made them a lot of money. And they're not treating me right. They're not taking care of me. And what's up with that? And so there, again, so there are issues on both sides of this coin here. And I think that's what makes this such a fascinating conversation when you talk about the, internal versus external arguments. So, but again, I hope I gave people something to think about here today with this episode. And I would surely enjoy to hear everybody's comments on this, if everybody has a take on this particular issue, as it were. But with that, I will wrap up by saying, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps the channel. Please be sure to leave your comments down below. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. And please be sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll see everybody out there again real soon. Thanks a lot.